Thank you very much for coming this morning. I think we beat the rain, but on the way home we might not be as lucky.
We will.
Huh?
We will.
We will. This morning we're going to meet somebody which might have us raise our eyebrows. So let's take a look. The pasuk in the Eshet Chayil, which we're going to start with, source number 1, Lo tira lebeita mishaleg ki chol beita lavush shanim. This woman does not fear for her household when the snow comes. Why not? Ki chol beita lavush shanim, because her entire house is bedecked with scarlet woolen garments. Here's a woman. She's not worried for the cold. She's not worried for the ice. She's not worried for the snowing days because she's already taken care of her house, and her house is draped in red, scarlet, woolen tapestries of all sorts, which gives off a certain kind of warmth. Who is this woman? What isn't she scared of? And what are these scarlet draperies that maintain the warmth such that she has no fear for the snow? Now, before I introduce to you who this woman is, the Malbim, which I didn't print out for you, the Malbim points out to us, we're about halfway through the Eshet Chayil at this point. This is probably the 12th or 13th woman that we're discussing, right? We're kind of nearing the end of the Eshet Chayil. Our Eshet Chayil, our woman of valor, is growing older. And as she grows older, right, she's not in the prime of her youth anymore. She's already looking forward to what the afterlife has in store for her. And according to the Malbim, Lo tira lebeita mishalek, she doesn't fear the snow. She doesn't fear, she's not worried for her house, for when the snow comes. The snow, says the Malbim, shehu melitza al hamavet. I didn't print this one out for you, but it says the Malbim, that's a reference, that's a metaphor for the time of death. We can understand why snow and ice and cold is a reference to death as opposed to heat, which is symbolic to life. So here the Eshet Chayil is already kind of thinking about the end of her life. And she's not scared of the day of snow. She's not scared of the day of ice. She's not scared of the day of death. She's not worried for her house. Now, what's her house? Her house, says the Malbim, shehem kochotea hanafshiyim. That's her soul. That's her soul. She's housed in her soul. That's what she lives through. She's not worried about her house, her soul, for when the day of snow comes, when the day of death comes, that she's going to remain without clothing. No, because look at her. She's draped in clothing. She'az titlabesh. What kind of clothing is she draped in? What kind of clothing is she going to have in the afterworld? Oh, malbushim shonim. A different kind of wardrobe. A different kind of wardrobe. Not the kind of wardrobe we have in our bedrooms. No, a different kind of wardrobe. What kind? Mitorah u'mitzvot she'asta. From whatever the deeds that she did during her lifetime, the Torah she studied, the Torah she supported, the mitzvot she performed, shehem na'asim levushim. Those will become her clothing. Right? That's going to be her clothing. Vehem levushim el hanefesh. That's going to be the clothing for her soul. So our Eshet Chayil, as we're kind of a little bit past the middle, we're getting closer to the end, is kind of thinking to herself about the end, and she has nothing to fear because she knows she is bedecked in draperies of Torah, of mitzvot. Who is this woman? What is her scarlet? And what does she think she needs to be scared of, but reassures herself she need not be scared of? Source number 2. Lo tira lebeita mishali ki chol beita levushanim. Who is this woman who does not fear the snow because she's bedecked in scarlet? Now, scarlet is not probably the most modest of colors, you would think. Why is she bedecked in scarlet? I'll tell you. Zu Rachav hazona. Ouch. This is Rachav, the harlot. Rachav, the prostitute. Hold it right there. I thought I was coming to learn about the women of valor. Are we going to spend all morning learning about a woman who was a prostitute? Indeed. This is Rachav, the harlot. B'sha'a sheba'u Yisrael la'chariv et Yericho. When the Jewish people were about to enter Israel for the first time as a nation, and they're about to destroy the first city, Jericho, Yericho, Lo nityar'a mehem. This Rachav, this prostitute, she was not a Jewish woman. She lived in what was called Canaan, right? Before Israel became Israel, while we were in the desert, while we were hanging out in Egypt, and then afterwards in the desert. She was a Canaaniyah. She was a Canaanite woman. She was living in the land of Canaan. She was not a Jewish woman whatsoever, and her profession was to be a harlot. And she heard on the news that there is a bunch of ex-slaves who managed to get out of Egypt, and they're going to be taking over soon. She was not scared of the takeover at all. She was not scared at all. Why? Because the Jewish people had made contact with her and they gave her some code. And the code was what? Et tikvat chut hashani. It was a cord, like a rope, made out of scarlet thread. What on earth is going on here? So let's take a few steps back. Let us study the setting of this woman, Rachav, who she is, and why on earth she makes it on the list of the Eshet Chayil. Let's begin at the top. It's about 1 week before we enter the land of Israel. So we've been hanging out in the desert for 40 long years, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner from the sky, drinking miracle water, right? A cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. Wow, what an incredible, miraculous existence. In a couple of days, we're going to be getting into the land of Israel, and we're going to be starting a new kind of life, getting dirt under our nails, working to support ourselves. And in a couple of days, we'll be getting there. So Yehoshua, who is already training to become leader of the Jewish people, because indeed Moses is no longer alive, he's going to be taking us into the land of Israel. Yehoshua takes things into his own hands, and rightly so. He sends a couple of spies, but not like the fiasco like we had with the 12 spies, no. He sends 2 spies just for some technical information about topography. Just wants to know about what the best way to enter is. He needs some technical questions answered. Source number 3. Right, so here we are, last couple of days in the desert. It's the evening, right, before we go into the land of Israel and before we take over and conquer. Vayishlach Yehoshua bin Nun. So Yehoshua sends min hashitim. Now I put that in bold because I need you to remember where he sent the spies from. We were lodging out in the desert, and the name of the village that we were in is called Shittim. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Shnaim anashim. He sends 2 people, meraglim, spies, cheresh, secret undercover spies, le'emor, and he told them, lechu reu et haaretz ve'et Yericho. Go spy out the land, particularly spy out Jericho, because that's going to be our door through which we're going to enter Israel. Okay, very good. They have their mission, they have their itinerary, they have their cover-up, whatever they need, maybe a portable tent. Actually not. Watch. They don't need a portable tent. They're going to go to a different place to hang out. What do? Vayilchu. They leave the desert and they arrive. Vayavo'u beit isha zona. They arrive at the house of a prostitute woman. Ushma Rachav, and her name is Rachav. Vayishkevu shama, and they slept there. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't commit any immoral acts. They didn't do anything wrong. In fact, the 2 spies which were sent were Pinchas and Kalev. These were the cream of the crop, right? These were the chief rabbis, so to speak. These were some of the holiest men of the Jewish people. But what an interesting place to spend the night. I mean, if you're going to spy out the land, I would think, if I was sending spies, I would send them a portable tent, maybe a sleeping bag, kacha compressed, in a backpack, and off you go. No, they don't bother with a portable tent. They go right to the house of Rachav. What are you doing there? It's not a very clean place to be for 2 good Jewish men. Rashi tries to calm our nerves a little bit by telling us that this Isha Zona, which literally means harlot woman, prostitute woman. Rashi tells us, zona, if you think about the word zona, it comes from the word zan, like birkat hamazon, right? When we say the prayer after we eat bread, birkat hamazon. Maza mazon? Mazon is food. So he says, Isha zona, she was a woman who sold food. She had like a grocery store. Like a bed and breakfast, a little bit of bed, a little bit of breakfast, quite literally. Right? So Rashi tries to calm our nerves. No, it wasn't so bad. She wasn't a woman of ill repute. Rather, source number 4, but 5th word, pundakita, like a pundak. A pundak is like a hostel. right? Like a bed and breakfast kind of place. Mocheret minei mezonot. She sold food, bagel, cream cheese, right? The Danish, some coffee, hot chocolate. She would sell food. The Abarbanel, which I didn't print out for you, says, oh, come on. Right? If she was running a grocery store, right, then the prophets wouldn't call her Isha Zona. If you're calling somebody Isha Zona, right, then, so says the Abarbanel, maybe she was really running a brothel, but the cover-up was like it was a hotel, right? So she was really doing immoral things, but she was just covering it up. And she ran it as if it was a bed and breakfast, but of course it was literally both of each. Just to give you a little bit of an inkling as to who this woman is. She wasn't just a simple prostitute. Rachav makes it on the top 4. If you take a look at source number 5, the Talmud, the Gemara itself attests to her fabulous, fabulous beauty. Arba nashim yefeifiyot hayu ba'olam. They were 4 astonishingly beautiful women in the world. God himself attests to their beauty. We know a couple of them. Sarah, well, Rachav is about to be grouped with Sarah. Yeah, she is. Right? Sarah was astonishingly beautiful. Avigail, who we studied a couple of months ago, ended up being the wife of King David. She was one of the prophetesses. She was astonishingly beautiful. Rachav, that's our Rachav. Ve'Esther, and our very own Queen Esther. These women were astonishingly beautiful. Rachav is one of these 4. Now, why are you grouping Rachav with these other 3 women? These other 3 women were the righteous pillars of the world, and you're grouping her here? What is going on here? I want to learn more about this woman. What is her strength? What is her power? So the Talmud tells us a little bit more, just so we know a little bit more about her personal history. Source number 6. Tanu Rabbanan. Before I read you the source, I'll introduce it as follows. The Gemara is about to tell us there were 4 women who aroused passion, lust, desire in other men, and they each did it in a different way. Now they weren't doing, most of them weren't doing anything wrong. It's just that they had this power, they had this allure, this magic, this charm, and really it aroused passion and lust in other people. Rachav is going to be on this list. Rachav, in fact, she's first on the list, Bishma Zinta. Rachav aroused passion through her name. Her name. How so? I'll tell you soon. But I'll show you the other 3 women. Yael, remember Yael? We studied her a couple of weeks ago. Yael bekola. Yael aroused passion through her voice. You would hear Yael's voice, and you could not withstand. If you were a man, your knees would turn into jello. Yael aroused passion in her voice, and she knew it. She did not use it to bring about her own self-destruction. She used it to bring about the destruction of the enemy of the Jews, and thus she became one of the heroines. Avigail b'zechirata. Avigail, who we also studied. Avigail b'zechirata. You would remember your encounter with Avigail. Now again, Avigail did nothing wrong. She was a prophetess. She did not do anything immoral. But if a man happened to have encountered her, been in her vicinity, and he would then remember her, his knees would turn into jello. And Avigail aroused this just by her memory. And the 4th woman, Michal bat Shaul, who we didn't study yet, but we will study her soon. Michal, the daughter of King Shaul, she aroused passion, bere'iyata. If anybody would see her, she was hypnotic. She would walk into the room and you would kind of be mesmerized by her presence. Again, she didn't do anything wrong. These women didn't do anything wrong, except for Rachav, and we'll talk about her in a moment. So these 4 women had this ability to really arouse passion in other people. Amar Rabbi Yitzhak, it was so bad with Rachav. She gets another 2 lines in the Gemara. Kol ha'omer Rachav, Rachav, miyad nikri. Any man who would hear her name twice, if somebody would walk into the room and say, oh, Rachav, Rachav, now I'm going to try to say this in a clean way, he would completely lose control over himself, right? He would really lose control over his physical abilities. If somebody were to hear Rachav's name mentioned twice. Amar le Rab Nachman, so Rabbi Nachman, who was one of the scholars in the Talmud, said, Ana amina Rachav, Rachav, lo ichpat li. Listen, I'm saying Rachav, Rachav, and look, nothing is happening to me. So they told him, Amar le, It's because you were never with Rachav. We're only talking about a man who was with her, who had relations with her, and who knew her. A man like this who would be reminded of her, and if you wouldn't even have to show him a picture of her. You would just say her name 2 times, he would already lose control over himself. Such was her power, such was her ability. So why are 2 good Jewish boys performing their mission, spending the night in this brothel? Go find yourself somewhere else to sleep. Why are you putting yourself in this risky situation? Now, P.S. again, these 2 Jewish men, Kalev and Pinchas, did nothing wrong. But on a very simple level, we're going to start off simple and we're going to get much deeper. But on a very simple level, why is Rachav's brothel the best place for 2 spies to spend the night? No one would look for them. Rachav's place was a busy place. It was so busy, I'm going to skip ahead to source number 8, which is going to help us answer our question. Why are 2 good, righteous, holy Jewish men spending the night there? Get a sleeping bag. Sleep on the lawn or something. What are you going inside there for? Maybe you could, sleep in the backyard, in the courtyard. What do you need to go inside for? Pretend you're a customer? Just ask for breakfast and nothing else? Why? Somebody was, yeah?
Yeah, probably because all the news of the town.
Ah, that's right. Hanging out in Rachav's house of ill repute was better than listening to CNN. Because CNN, just gives you all the kosher news. But when you go to Rachav, you hear what's really going on politically. Why? She is connected politically? You bet. Source number 8. There was not one political official who did not have relations with Rachav. She was in high demand. Any official, any king, any member of the parliament. And in Canaan, at the time, before we came to take over, there were 31 kings. And they each were with Rachav. They were steady customers. And all the officials and everybody who was anybody was with Rachav. So if they wanted to get any information about the ins and outs, are these people going to put up a fight when we come in a couple of days? Are they armed? Do they have soldiers in the reserves? Are they going to give us a hard time? What are they thinking about the Jews? Right? Do they have arsenals of weapons stored anywhere? Is there anything we should know about? If there's anything you want to know, right, and you want to know the real scoop, not what they're projecting on CNN and in the newspapers on the headlines, the place to go is to Rachav. She's been there for a long time. Show you how long. Continuing source number 8. Amru. But 10 shanim hayta כשיצאו ישראל ממצרים. When we left Egypt, Rachav was 10. Rachav was 10. In Canaan, right? Again, she wasn't Jewish. She wasn't one of ours. She was a Canaaniyah. So when we left Egypt, she was 10. וזנתה כל 40 שנה שהיו ישראל במדבר. And for 40 years, she ran this house of prostitution in Canaan. So the 40 years that we were in the desert are the 40 years, right, that she was really making her big bucks. Achar nun shana, I won't read you the rest, I'll read it to you later. What happened to her at the end of this 50 years? You'll see it soon. Okay, so back to my big burning question. What are 2 good Jewish men doing hanging out over there? Right? And you told me, well, on a simple level, they get a lot of news there, they get a lot of information there. So now let's take a look at how the story continues. Source number 7. ויאמר למלך יריחו לאמור, הנה אנשים באו הנה הלילה מבני ישראל לחפור את הארץ. The king of Yericho, the mayor, if you wish, of Yericho, finds out within minutes. You see how quickly news spreads like wildfire. He finds out within minutes that 2 spies have made it into Canaan, and they're going to spy out the land. And what kind of spies? From where? Bnei Israel, those ex-slaves. Oh, not those ex-slaves. Oh no, they're here. What are you scared about? They're ex-slaves. Look how scared he is. Pasuk Gimel, next line. Vayishlach melech Yericho el Rachav le'emor. So the king of Jericho immediately dispatches messengers to Rachav, our prostitute, saying, Hotzi anashim habayim elai, Rachav. Right? Spit them out. You have no idea who you're housing. כי לחפור כל הארץ באו. They're here to spy out the land. Rachav, hand them over. I know you don't know, but you're housing two spies. Rachav, take a look at what she does. Pasuk Dalet. ותיקח האישה את שני האנשים. She takes these two gentlemen, Rabbi Kalev and Rabbi Pinchas. Rabbis, come, gotta tell you something. Where? Go meet me upstairs on the roof. ותצפנהו, she hides them. ותאמר, כן באו אליי. She hides these two people, and she goes back to the messengers. You know, the two rabbis, they came to me. ולא ידעתי מאין המה. Listen, I had no clue who they were. You know, I don't check ID cards lately anymore, right? I don't know who they were. She's putting up a big drama. And you know, as the city gate was about to slam shut, Jericho was a walled-in city. Jericho was completely walled in. And if curfew time already came, you could not get out of the city because at a certain time of night, they locked the city gate. And after that, you were stuck until the following morning. So typically, you would hang out by Rachav if you had nowhere else to go. Yeah? And she says to these two policemen, as they were closing the gate, "B'choshech, anashim yatzu, lo yadati ana halchu." They left. They're not here anymore. They left already, you know, right before they closed the gates. They managed to get out. I don't know where they went. Ritfu meher, quickly run after them. Ki tasiyum, I know you'll get them. I know you'll find them. Now, in the meantime, where are these two spies hanging out? Pasuk v'avi helatam hagaga. She had already brought them up to her rooftop. And she hid them under some flax stalks. Well, I guess she was drying them for flax seeds, yeah. And she was putting out her flax stalks up on the roof. She had plenty of them, enough to hide these two people. And that's where she was hiding them. Now, in the meantime, these two policemen who were looking for the spies, they were chasing these two spies all the way down the Jordan River. So basically, they're on a wild goose chase while the two spies are on Rachav's rooftop. Before we go on to continue reading, I want to take my microscope and I want to zoom in on Rachav. So far, objectively, I don't like Rachav very much. Why not? So far, first of all, she's despicable. She's running a very lowly business. She's a prostitute. So that's already 2 points against her. Second of all, she understands that these people are spies, and she is protecting them. Now, why is she possibly protecting them? She knows they're going to come and they're going to take over. Why is she protecting them? You scratch my back, I scratch yours, right? I protect you, and in return, you protect mine. She's making maybe some cold political calculations. Right? We call this, what do we call this? This is a crime when you go against your own people and you help the enemy infiltrate. We call this treason. Right? She's committing the crime of treason. When you're opening the doors to the enemy, right? And you know that your own people, you should be watching out for your own people. What are you watching out for the Jews for? What are you protecting two measly Jews? What, they have something for you? No? Money is not low. You have plenty of money. Why are you protecting the enemy? Why are you housing the enemy? This is a very, very despicable crime. She's not loyal to her people. Now, what she's about to do is to tell them, you know what, I'm going to save your life, and I've got a favor to ask of you. When you come and take over, will you protect my people? I got brothers and sisters and mom and dad and friends and family and everybody. Right? I scratch your backs, you scratch mine. So I don't like Rachav very much. But if Rachav is one of the women of the Eshet Chayil, it must mean that I cannot take this woman at face value, and that her protecting these two men comes from a much, much, much deeper place than I do you a favor, now you have to pay me back. So let's take a look at where her disloyalty towards her own people comes from. Pasuk Chet, back to source number 7. Vehema terem yishkavun, before our two rabbis go to sleep, vi'alta alehem alagag. She goes upstairs quickly to the rooftop. V'tomer el ha'anashim, and she says to Kalev and Pinchas before they fall asleep, she says, I got to share something with you. Yadati, I've known for a long time, Ki natan Hashem lachem et haaretz. I know that God has promised you this land. I've been watching CNN for 40 years, and I've been waiting for your takeover and your arrival. I have no doubt in my mind that God is going to give you this land. And you know something? You know what else I know? You don't know this, but I know this. Ki nafla ematchem aleinu. We are terrified of you. The men are shaking in their pants. They're horrified of you. They're dreading your arrival. The men are melting. They're so terrified of your takeover. Now, you don't know this, but I know you want this information. And I'm telling you, I know, P.S., that you guys are going to come and take over because I know that your God promised you this land. And I'll tell you, the men are terrified. You know why? I'll tell you why. Not because you are strong soldiers. You guys are nothing, right? You were slaves for 200 years, and now you're a bunch of ex-slaves. You know why we're scared? Ki shamanu et asher hovish Hashem et mei yam suf mipnechem. We heard what God did for you. We heard that He dried up the sea for you. When we heard that, that was it. Remember 40 years ago, you guys were probably little boys. Maybe you don't remember so well when the sea split, but we haven't forgotten it. It's in our history books already. We know that God dried up the sea for you. And we also heard what you guys did to those two mighty, mighty kings, Sichon and Og, across the Jordan, that you completely decimated them. We heard how your God has been helping you out. V'nishma v'yimas levaveinu. We're hearing all this news about the miracles that your God is making for you, and our hearts are melting within us. Velo kama od ruach beish mipnechem. No man has wind left in him. Now that's a funny statement. The commentaries here, I'm going to try to say it as clean as possible. Rachav was telling them, business is slow. Business is dead. No man has any wind left in him, so to speak. Nobody's coming by. People are terrified. People are terrified because they know that you guys are going to come in here soon, right? They're so scared that they've got no wind left in them, right? And business, therefore, is dead. Ki Hashem Elokechem hu Elokim b'shamayim ma'al v'al haaretz mitachat. Wait, I know this verse from somewhere. I'm going to read it again. It's underlined. Ki Hashem Elokechem hu Elokim b'shamayim ma'al v'al haaretz mitachat. We say this verse, almost exactly this verse, in prayers where? In the Aleinu prayer. In the Aleinu. Whoa, look at that. A pasuk coming out of a prostitute's mouth. A prostitute. She's still a prostitute here. Yeah? And this verse makes it into our prayers. Now, P.S., you should know, the same verse appears in the book of Dvarim, in the Chumash. This is not the only time this pasuk appears. The same pasuk, exactly the way we say it in the Aleinu, appears in Sefer Dvarim. And here Rachav is saying a pasuk which ends up making it into one of our prayers, into the Aleinu prayer. Anybody know who composed Aleinu? Yoshua himself. Yoshua himself composed the Aleinu. And as part of the Aleinu, he takes the words coming out of the mouth of a prostitute who, P.S., what ended up happening to this prostitute? She ended up converting and becoming Yoshua's own wife. If you take a look at source number 8, right? I'll read you the lines that I skipped a few minutes ago. Last line in source number 8, Acharnun Shana. At the end of 50 years, right? So again, at the age of 10, she started. For 40 years, she ran her business. At the age of 50, Nitgaira, she converted. She converted. Why? Out of a sincere conviction. Not out of cold political calculations. You scratch your back, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll protect you if you protect me. No. But out of a sincere knowledge and sincere conviction that the God of the Jews has done these miracles, and whoever these Jews are, I need to be part of them. Whoever they are, God is doing this for them. I must be part of them. And so she marries Yoshua. And she makes a statement. She pleads to God. God, I know for 40 years, haven't been a very good person. Please forgive me in the merit. Last couple of words in source number 8. Yehem machuli bischar chevel chalon upishtim. Please forgive me in the merit of the chevel. The chevel is a rope. The chalon is a window. The pishtim are our flax stalks. I've been bad, but I beg you for forgiveness in the merit of my rope, in the merit of the window, and in the merit of the flax. What is she talking about? What's the rope? What's the window? The flax we know, right? The flax we know because she hid them on the rooftop under the flax. So let's take a look and let's understand what is the window and what is the rope. I'll come back to source number 9 in a moment. Let's take a look at source number 10. Back to the rooftop. We're on the rooftop. She's telling them what they need to know. And then she makes her request. V'ata hishavuna li b'Hashem, please swear to me in the name of God. Ki asiti machem chesed, I did you a big favor. V'asitem gam atem im beit avi chesed, please do a favor with my family too. Unetatem li ot emet, you got to give me a sign, because I know you're going to get out of here in about 15 minutes, okay? But give me a sign that you're really going to keep your promise to me. What do you want, Rachav? I want you to, when you come in a couple of days, to take over. Keep me alive, and my sisters, and my brothers, and my mother, and my father. And whatever belongs to us. Please, save us from being killed. They say to her, the two rabbis, Kalev and Pinchas, Rachav, we're going to save you under a couple of conditions. Condition number 1, keep your mouth closed. You don't tell anybody we were here. Don't spill the beans. You spill the beans, that's it. The promise is over. Don't tell anybody we were here. Pasuk Tadvav, she agrees. We're going to see soon that the conditions, they're going to continue. There are going to be 2 more conditions. She prepares for them. Now, I have to explain to you kind of the setting of what her building looked like. Remember I told you the city of Jericho was completely surrounded by a wall. Okay. Now, this wall also served as one of the walls of people's houses. In other words, some people, their house, right, one of the walls of the city was one of the walls of their house. Their house was attached to that wall. Rachav, she ran her brothel, right, in a building. Her house was attached to the wall of Jericho. So if there was ever a customer who needed to, or a robber, because the sources tell us she would deal with robbers too, people who would kind of sneak into the city and then she would need to help them sneak out before they would get caught. So she had this window, but her window, right, facing towards the outside was already the outside of the city. So if they missed curfew and they locked the gates, they could just jump out of her window because her house was connected to the wall of the city. So what does she do? She does for them like she does to the robbers who she used to do business with them. She let out a rope. There's my rope, okay, through the window. Pasuk tells us because her house is attached to the wall. And she lives there. And as they're kind of making their way, holding on to this rope, making their way down, about to make their way down the window, she tells them, run to the mountain, because the police is going to be looking for you for a couple more days. So go hide out in the mountain. Okay? You hide out for 3 days until the police will stop looking for you, and then you can go back to the desert, go back to your people. But hide out for 3 days. Right, so they're kind of going to continue setting up the terms of the oath. Condition number 2. Condition number 1, keep your mouth closed, and we'll save you. Condition number 2, we're giving you a rope made out of scarlet thread. Tie it to your window, and when we come into the city, right, we'll see and we'll give instructions to everybody. We'll see that rope and we won't harm whoever is in that house. Okay? So tie this to your window through which you let us out. Whoever you want saved has to be under this rooftop. We're not going to go saving anybody else in any other house. Whoever you want saved has to be under this rooftop. Whoever leaves your house, he's responsible for his own blood, because we're not going to save anybody unless he's unless he's under your roof. She says, good, last pasuk, v'tomekid v'chem hu, I'll do whatever you say, and she ties the scarlet rope on her window. And she sends a prayer to God. And she says, dear God, please forgive me in the merit of my window, in the merit of the rope, and in the merit of the flax stalks. Now there is another source. It's called the Mechilta. It's a different midrash, the midrash Mechilta, which says, and this is actually what I want to focus on, that she asked God to please forgive her for the following three things: the rope, the window, and the wall. The wall. The second source changes it. Yehem machuli, please forgive me in the merit of the rope, through which I let them down, in the merit of the window, through which I let them down, and in the merit of the wall which her house was attached to. What is she asking? So the midrash there says as follows. Rachav was asking for forgiveness, and these three things, the merit of which she is seeking, are actually representative of three mitzvot, which she's going to take upon herself. And they are the mitzvot which are particular to a woman. Namely, the mitzvah of nidah, marital holiness in marital relations, and she decided to take it upon herself. The mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles, and the mitzvah of chala, which are the three mitzvot which are specific to a woman. Now, how are those parallel to the chevel, the chalon, and the choma? The chevel is a rope. Forgive me in the merit of the rope. The rope through which I let them down, the rope looks like what? Looks like the challah, right? The rope is like the challah, right, that you make. So forgive me in the merit, right, of the challah which I undertake upon myself. Forgive me in the merit of the window through which I let them out, but the window through which light and illumination comes through, what's that? That's the candle. And forgive me in the merit of the wall. Oh, that mighty wall. The wall which is a wall of separation, right? That is the separation between men and women, right? When one cannot be together, right? Maintaining the sanctity and the holiness between husband and wife, that is parallel to nidah. Forgive me in the merit of those three things. And say the commentaries, Kol isha, I don't have this printed for you, but tikuna prati, every woman came into this world to rectify something particular. And we learned this from Rachav, who asks God, God, please save me in the merit of these three things. She understands in the bottom, in the recesses of her soul, that she has come here to rectify these three things. And you know what? Those things which are our strengths, those things which are our spiritual powers, which we are supposed to rectify, are probably those very same areas which are going to give us the most difficulty in life. That which I am supposed to do in life, that which I am supposed to rectify, that which I'm supposed to invest my energies in, right there is probably the area that I'm going to mess up the most. Rachav understands this, and look at what she does. And so she asks that those three things which are particular to a woman, in the merit of those three things, she begs for forgiveness. Now I have a deeper question. And now I see who Rachav is. I understand that this woman is a woman of great caliber. This is a woman of great intuition. This is a woman who steps up to the plate, who rises to the occasion, and in the moment of tremendous tension, decides, not because of cold political calculations, but because she knows what this God did for the Jewish people. And whoever these Jewish people are, if God is going to do that for them, I need to be part of them. And she gives up everything, and she was running a lucrative business. She could have been a multi-billionaire, yeah? She gives it all up. And understand, she's putting herself in great danger. The Jewish people, okay, we've been listening, on CNN, okay, we heard some rumors, but tachlis, where are you? She's giving herself over to a bunch of ex-slaves. They don't even have, a solid standing army yet. She's giving herself over to these weaklings, so to speak, right? And she's really taking a risk. But she's doing it. She's giving herself over to them. And she doesn't even know if they're going to succeed. She's all doing it based on what? Based on faith. Based on intuition that if God did that for them, God is surely going to protect them forever. Then I want to be part of those people. And she gives it all up. She gives it all up. And so here is our woman of great intuition. Now my question, let's open this up and take a look at the layers beneath. On a very, very simple level, The woman who holds the key to the land of Israel is Rachav, my prostitute. Come on, God. Couldn't you do this in a more lofty way? If Moses would hold the keys of Israel, ooh, that would be nice. Maybe, I don't know, some prophetess, have her hold the key to the land of Israel. What do I mean by she holds the key to the land of Israel? We've been spending 40 years in the desert. We're about to come in and attack. The woman who literally opens the doors for us, is not such a clean woman. Okay, she does tshuva, she steps up to the plate, but for 40 years, come on. Why couldn't the doors of the land of Israel be opened up to us, right? Through more lofty means. Why dirty? Why encased in such impurity? Why like this? So here, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to discover. I'll start off with a beautiful, beautiful thought in Masechet Berachot, and then we're going to introduce another concept. Source 11. The Gemara tells us, B'sha'ah she'Yisrael osim retzono shel makom, when the Jewish people do the will of God, when the Jewish people do what they're supposed to do, and Hashem is pleased with them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechazer b'kol ha'olam kulo. Hashem does a search through the whole world, v'roeh ezet tzadik be'umot ha'olam, and he finds righteous people among the non-Jews, u'mevi'o u'medabko be'Yisrael. And Hashem brings those righteous non-Jews close to the Jewish people. Like, for example, like Yitro, who became Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, and like our very own Rachav. Again, my big question is, why does the key that opens up the door to Israel, why is it being held in the hands of a prostitute? Why not more loftier? And the Gemara tells us, look, step number one, when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, when God is pleased with us, then God is going to do a very, very careful search among all the peoples of the world to find the righteous non-Jews, to bring them close to the Jewish people. And he saw beneath all of Rachav's activities that there was a woman of great caliber there, of great intuition, right, who, when the moment was necessary, knew how to drop it all and to step up to the plate. First of all, 2 points for Rachav. But there is something deeper than this. There is a concept based on a pasuk in Sefer Kohelet, written by King Solomon. Source number 12, I just want the underlined piece. Says Shlomo HaMelech, there is a rule in the way that God runs the world. And if you understand this rule, then lots of things about how God runs the world will fall into place. The rule is like this. Re'eh gam et zeh le'umat zeh asa ha'elokim. Whatever God created in the world, He created it. Zeh le'umat zeh. This parallel to this. This against this. This opposed to this. Meaning what? Any force, anything that God creates in the world, He creates it with its exact opposite. The only way that something is able to exist, says Shlomo Melech, look closely, understand how God runs the world. Ki et zeh le'umat zeh asa Elokim. Hashem created everything this parallel to this. Right? Hashem created dark, Hashem created light. You can't have light without dark. Hashem created an Avraham, but an Avraham can only exist if you have a what? Well, Avraham was called the Ivri. The Ivri, why? Because he was mi'ever, he was across all the other peoples of the world. In other words, an Avraham can only be an Avraham if there's a face-off with the rest of the world. A Yitzchak, you have a Yitzchak, but you can only have a Yitzchak if you have countering him a Yishmael. You can only have a Yaakov if you have countering him an Esav. Whatever great holiness there is in the world, there must be its exact polar opposite. Why? To always maintain a balance. There must always be a state of balance such that the free choice to choose between one path and the other is always available. And so, if we're about to walk in, if we're about to step foot in the land that God Himself confers Kedusha upon it, that God Himself confers holiness upon this land, then its exact polar opposite has to be there as well. And if you were to kind of think of it graphically, imagine for a moment a large kind of tower, a large building, right? Here's ground level, right? Here's ground level, ground zero, so to speak. And imagine a large tower, right, reaching up to the heavens. That tower can only stand strong if beneath it is what? A very, very, very deep foundation. The grander the tower, the deeper the foundation needs to be. Now, if you're going to make a tower that's only, 3 feet tall, then your foundation also only needs to be 3 feet tall. But if you're going to make a skyscraper, then the flip side needs to be really, really deep as well. So if you were to take this diagram, if you're able to reach so high, the only reason you're able to reach so high is because you're also able to reach so low. And if you see somebody who is so low, lower than low, despicable, filthy, dirty, don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole, there's only one thing you know about that person. What is that? That person can reach so high. Whatever there exists in the world, God created its exact polar opposite. So when you're about to enter the land of greatest kedusha, of greatest holiness, there must be the potential for kedesha. Kedesha is the biblical word for a prostitute. Kadosh means what? Kadosh actually doesn't really mean holy. Kadosh means other, different. Like we say about God, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. What's a Kadosh? Holy, holy. What's a holy? Holy. Today I want to be holy. How do you be holy? Really, Kadosh doesn't, it means other. Whatever you know of, God is other, different, other. That's really what Kadosh means. Rachav, she was also other. Yeah, she was set aside for other purposes, right? If you have the potential for Kedusha, you must have the same potential for Kedesha. Do you remember the city from which those 2 spies were sent? I told you to keep it in mind. It's page number 1, source number 3. The city of Shittim. Shittim. Now, the city of Shittim is no simple city. The city of Shittim encapsulates in it this secret. The secret of what? Of whenever you have the potential for one energy, you must have the same potential for the exact opposite energy. The city of Shittim holds within it that secret. How so? Anybody remember what happened in the city of Shittim? What? Right. The girls of Midian, right, when we were hanging out in the desert and Bilam wanted to curse us and it didn't really work so well, so he was told, forget the curses. You're never going to curse these people. They're Jews. You can't curse them. But what you can do is bring some very juicy young girls into the camp and, the rest will take care of itself. And that's exactly what he did. And 24,000 Jews ended up dying because of the terrible fiasco that happened when these juicy girls came into the camp. This happened in the city of Shittim. Now I want to show you something about the city of Shittim. Source number 13. Ketiv, Vayishev Yisrael b'Shittim, Vayachel ha'am lezanot. So we know that when the Jewish people were hanging out in Shittim when we were in the desert, they started to behave sexually immoral with the Midiani girls. You know why the city is called Shittim? Shittim, shasu shtut. You know what shtut is? Shtut, nonsense, shtut. The city is called Shittim because that's where they did shtut, that's where they did nonsense. V'yechel ha'am lezanot, and the men began to behave immorally. Now watch what the Midrash tells us. There is a Kabbalistic concept that different geographic locations have energies over the people that live there. Depending on where you live, different geographic locations give off different energies, different kochot, different influences upon the citizens who live there. The Midrash gives us a few examples. Yesh ma'ayanot shemegadlim giborim. Now the Midrash says it like a metaphor. There are certain springs of water in certain geographic locations where if you drink that water, it has an effect on you. It's a metaphor. Right? It means that there are certain energies. Okay, there are certain energies which the geographic location gives off that if you live there, you're going to be affected by it. So there are certain geographic locations, they produce mighty people. mighty warriors, mighty strong people. V'yesh chalashim, and there's certain geographic locations they produce weaklings. They produce very, very weak people. V'yesh na'im, there's certain geographic locations which produce beautiful people, one after the other. Always you're going to have Miss Universe from that country. Beautiful people. V'yesh mechoarim, and there are certain geographic locations, I'm sorry, says the Gemara, they produce ugly people. One after the other, one is uglier than the next. V'yesh tznoim, there are certain geographic locations that breed modest people. The energy, right, the spiritual energy of that location is one which breeds modest people. V'yesh shtufim bezima, and there are certain geographic locations which breed sexually immoral people. You can be covered from head to toe, but these people have absolutely no self-control. Uma'ayan Shittim, back to my city of Shittim, guess what? What influence did the city of Shittim have over its inhabitants? Sheznutaya. It was one of sexual immorality. Bil'am knew the secret. Bilam, who was a prophet of the non-Jews who wanted to curse us, he knew this secret. He knew that Shittim gives off the energy of sexual morality. So why not harness that for my benefit so that I can have the Jewish people crumble? Just use whatever the energy is. V'hu mashkel Sodom. P.S. The city of Sodom, which we know of because it got destroyed. Sodom milks off of Shittim. Oh, what's our punchline? At the end of days, when Moshiach comes, watch what's going to happen. Second to last slide. And because that spring was kind of cursed, the spring of Shittim and the spring of Sodom, and it breeds immoral people. In the future, Hashem is going to dry out that spring, and a different water is going to flow. Where is the different water going to come from? Uma'ayan mi beit Hashem yetze. A spring of water is going to erupt from the house of God, which is in which city? Yerushalayim. Vehishka et nachal hashittim, and is going to give water to where? To Shittim. In other words, in the future, at the end of days, when Moshiach comes, the city of Yerushalayim, right, water is going to erupt from there. But again, we're talking, this is metaphorical, and the energy of Yerushalayim, and that's what I wanted to figure out. What's the energy of Israel? So I know the energy of different geographic locations affects different people differently. Well, what's the energy of Israel? The energy of Israel is one of what? Is one of Kedusha, of one of holiness, is one of purity. Lots of other energies of Eretz Yisrael, energy of Torah, energy of wisdom, makes you smart, right? Like anybody who just came back from Israel can tell you learning Torah in Israel is not the same as learning Torah anywhere else, because it's just a different ma'ayan, it's a different energy. So at the end of days, a fountain is going to spring forth from Yerushalayim and is going to give water to Nachal HaShittim. Again, whatever God creates, it's one with the exact opposite. If you can achieve the highest of heights, it's also because you can achieve the lowest of the low. And in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, where you have the potential for tremendous Kedusha, it's no surprise that the woman who holds the key to Israel is a woman who spent her lifetime being a Kadesha, being a prostitute, because everything that God creates in the world is one parallel to the other. Both energies have to be parallel to each other. This is an important concept to remember, and I'd like to take our discussion of Rachav, and I'd like to open up a small side question, which I think is an important question. This question of why does this woman whose mouth is encased in impurity, whose hands have done all these despicable things, and yet her mouth speaks this lofty verse, which I daven 3 times a day, and her hands open up the land of Israel. I find a similar phenomena in our era. In our generation, or maybe a generation ago, who held the key after 2,000 years of exile, which opened up for us the doors of Israel? Who kind of opened up the doors of Israel? Oh, when you look pictures of that, you look at pictures of them, they don't look necessarily like the most pious people. They don't necessarily look like the most God-fearing people, right? The people who held in their hand the key which opened up the doors of Israel, which had been closed, right, when we were in exile for 2,000 years, were people who, you would look at them and you would think, not so God-fearing. It's an interesting phenomena. The Netziv, Rabbi Neftali Tzvi Yehuda of Berlin, who wrote a very famous commentary in the Torah called the Emek Davar, asks the same question. And the Netziv is more of a contemporary, and he lived in the beginning of the 1900s, so he really witnessed this, Rachav type phenomena where the people who hold the key to open up the doors of Israel after 2,000 years of exile don't really look like they're too God-fearing. Why did God choose to bring about, our entry into the land of Israel in this manner? Why not, bring about the entry into the land of Israel in a different manner? Says the Netziv, be very careful when you ask that question. Don't tell God how to run the show. There is somebody who once told God how to run the world, and he got into trouble. Who was it? Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moses, was sent to bring the Jews out of Egypt, you know what he told God? Source 14, last page. V'em lo ya'aminu li. Hashem, you got the wrong man, says Moses to God. They're not going to believe me. V'lo yishmeu b'koli. They're never going to listen to me. Ki yomru lo nira elecha Hashem. God appeared to you. Musa? God never appeared to you. Now, why would the Jews react like this to Moshe Rabbeinu? Vadai, says the Netziv, lo itkaven Moshe ki Yisrael lo yaminu klal begeula. It's not because the Jews didn't believe in redemption. Of course, the Jews knew they were going to be taken out of Egypt. Ela, Moshe chashash. Moshe was worried, not that they wouldn't believe in redemption. What was he worried about when he turned to God and said, God, you got the wrong man. They're never going to believe me. They're never going to believe that you spoke to me. Shelo ya'aminu lo ki Hashem shlacho. Moshe says to Hashem, they're never going to believe that you sent me. Mipnei sheMoshe lo haya yadua kegadol b'Torah. Moshe was not known as a big Torah scholar. Shenimsara lahem min ha'avot. Now again, the Torah wasn't given yet, but the Torah was given to individuals. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov passed it down to the 12 tribes, right? The tribe of Levi was teaching down in Egypt, so we had the Torah with us as individuals. And Moshe Rabbeinu had it, but he didn't look like a person who would have it. Gam lo haya mukar b'kedusha v'chasidut. If you would look at Moshe, if he'd be walking down the street of Egypt in the shopping mall or something, yeah, you would look at him and you wouldn't look twice at him. You wouldn't think he was a holy person. Moshe שהיה בנעוריו בפלטינו של פרעה. Moshe grew up in Paro's palace. עסק בחוכמות חיצוניות. He had a PhD. He studied secular subjects. דיבר מצרית. He spoke Egyptian. He went to North Egyptian University. When you would see Moshe walking outside, he would wear a university sweatshirt. North Egyptian University or something. You wouldn't think he was particularly pious. היה לבוש כמצרי. He would dress like an Egyptian. Whatever, they were wearing on the Egyptian college campuses, that's what he would wear. To the point where when the daughters of Yitro, remember Moshe, he saved the daughters of Yitro, right? The shepherds wanted to hurt them, and Moshe saved them. When the girls went home to Daddy and said, Daddy, you never guess what happened. We were attacked by the shepherds, but somebody saved us. Now you and I know it's Moshe. They didn't know it was some righteous man. Who did they think saved them? Daddy, some Egyptian guy saved us. He looked Egyptian, he walked Egyptian, he talked Egyptian. So Moshe made some quick internal calculations, and they said, Hashem, I got a better idea. You got the wrong man. Go choose my brother Aaron. Ki Aaron achiv kedosh Hashemo. He looks holy. He's got the beard and everything. Sheya naviot b'Mitzrayim. Everybody knows that he was a prophet. Hu haraoi liyot shaliach Hashem. Hashem, my brother should be the one to take the Jews out of Egypt. He is the worthy one to save us and to redeem us. V'haya chet'o shel Moshe. And Moshe's mistake, and the Netziv doesn't say mistake, he says his sin, שבא ללמד את הקדוש ברוך הוא איך צריך לגאול את עמו ישראל. Moshe is coming to teach God how to redeem the Jewish people. No, God, you're doing it wrong. You got to do like this and like that. Thank you. It says God on my resume, not on your resume. I'm God. I'm on the show. I'll decide how I want to redeem the Jewish people, and I'm going to do it through you. ונענש על כך, and Moshe even got punished for that. כי באמת אין לחוות דעת את השם. Don't tell God what to do. Doesn't mean you can't pray. You can pray, you can tell God what you want, and you're supposed to tell God what you want and why you want it. But don't go telling God how he should run his world. Again, pray, tell God what you want, but don't tell God that right, the way you're running the world, you don't know what you're doing. I think I know better. כמו שאמר הנביא, just like the prophet Yeshayahu says, כי לא מחשבותיי מחשבותיכם ולא דרכיכם דרכיי. Hashem says, my thoughts are not your thoughts and your ways are not my ways. We work on different wavelengths. Says the Netziv, this back and forth between God and Moses, we can apply it to our own generation. Second paragraph, שאין כללת השם רבוצה לארצנו להיות שממה. Says the Netziv, when we see that, the land of Israel is no longer desolate. Again, the Netziv is writing this in the early 1900s, yeah? Late 18, early, I'm not sure of the exact date, but he's writing it as we're coming back to the land of Israel. אז רצונו יתברך שתתיישב הארץ על ידי ישראל עמו. And when it seems clear that Hashem wants his Jewish children to come back to the land of Israel, and when we hear that the voice of our beloved God, he wants us to come back to Israel. If you kind of read God's signs and God's codes and God's secret messages, he seems to be communicating to us that little by little he wants his children to come back home. And we should really be exuding an air of love of the land, and to really do what it seems to be the will of God is, namely to inhabit the land. Be it if a person works in agriculture in Israel, or if you work industrially, or or maybe you're a business person, whatever it is, or maybe maybe you're a spiritual person and you want to write books that are going to speak about inhabiting the land of Israel, whatever it may be, says the Netziv, what is his punchline? אין לנו לחשוב מחשבות כי ראוי היה הדבר הגדול הזה להיות באופנים אחרים. Don't conclude that, maybe our entry back into the land of Israel should have happened differently through different means, by people who look more religious, by people who look more observant. Well, maybe if the people who were the Zion, everybody will have to give their own accounting. The people who are not, observant of the Torah, they will have to give their own accounting. But my conclusion should not be that because the key, right, which opened up the doors of Israel, was being held by people who seemed to look anti-religious, that therefore the whole thing has to be therefore the whole thing is not valid at all. That cannot be your conclusion. It can't be your conclusion, because ki al ze laka Moshe Rabbeinu, that was the mistake that Moshe Rabbeinu made. Right? So people like Rachav, people who on the outside look like they are encased in tum'ah. Again, when you see somebody who is lower than low, who is filthier than filthy, there's only one thing and that is that there lies tremendous, tremendous holiness. If you were for a moment to paint the picture differently, the first picture I painted for you was a tower going high, right, and the foundation going down. Kabbalistically, the picture is actually a little bit different. Kabbalistically, the picture is a fruit, or let's say the seed of a fruit, and what is contained in the seed? The potential for hundreds of thousands of fruits. So picture a fruit or a seed, okay, with a layer of peel, and another 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 peel. You have layers upon layers of layers and layers of peel. Now sometimes the peel is a really tough nut, right? And I look at this peel and I say, judging on the peel, forget it. There's nothing in there. Just chuck the whole thing. You'll never get to the fruit. Sometimes when you judge by the peel, you give up and ever hoping that there's any fruit inside. But the Kabbalistic teaching here is, why is it that sometimes the seed which contains in it such holiness, such potential for tremendous breakthrough of spiritual goodness, the forces of evil don't ever want that to come out. The forces of evil don't ever want that goodness to erupt. So what do? They plug it up with a peel and another peel and another peel and another peel, so you should never think to look there. So you as an outsider, as an onlooker, you behold this peel and you say, forget it. There's no way you can ever crack through this shell. Just chuck the whole thing. Don't even go looking there. The forces of evil, yay, we did it, we succeeded. The loftier something can be, the holier something can be, the more potential for goodness that is embedded in something, the greater, the thicker the peel around it is going to be. Oh, so how do you penetrate through the peel? How do you penetrate through the peel? What is it that you need to penetrate and to zoom past all the peel and to get to what is on the inside? There is something. There is something. Maybe I'll ask you what it is. What is it? What is it? There is something, is a word that I'm looking for, is a tool that when you have something which contains in it great potential for great goodness and great wonderful things to come into the world, but it's encrusted by layers and layers that makes you think, don't go looking there. Let's take an example, a very quick example. Let's take the Mashiach. His soul, right? Wow, the Mashiach, he's going to bring the world to a state of perfection. We're all waiting for this fruit to become a full-fledged fruit, correct? Correct? Now the Mashiach, if you think about it, his past is not really so beautiful. Which tribe does the Mashiach have to come from? Yehuda. Yehuda, the story, we didn't learn it, but it's not such a kosher story, at least when you look at it externally. Yehuda, right, one of the 12 tribes, the woman who he married, through which the Mashiach is going to come, was a woman who he thought was a prostitute. It was his own daughter-in-law, which is also problematic, right, that he saw her on the street and he thought he was a prostitute. So what was he going to be with her? It's beyond the scope of our study, right, but at face value, it doesn't look so clean. All kings, Mashiach being one of them, all kings come from who? Who is the king from who all kings will come? King David. There's another layer of peel, because David had 18 wives, but the one wife through which the Mashiach is going to come, what's her name? And he met her, their first date, on the rooftop. Yeah, when she was taking a bath, and then the curtain pierced, and he saw her naked, and he wanted her. Again, we will study Bathsheba actually next, and that story deserves a lot of study, but when you take it just at face value, when you just observe the outer peel, it's not such a kosher story. It's not such a kosher story. Right? Yaakov, who gave birth to the 12 tribes, Yehuda being one of them, right? He bore these 12 tribes by being married to 2 sisters. Also not kosher. A man is not allowed to marry 2 sisters, right? The woman, David, King David, who's his great-great-grandmother, the first woman we studied? Ruth. Oh, I don't even want to go there. Ruth, right, who is called the mother. She's the mother of royalty. She wasn't even a Jewish woman. She was a Moaviyah. Well, the fact that she's not a Jewish woman, that wasn't a terrible thing at all. But the fact that she is a Moaviyah, she comes from Moab, that's ugly. Because what is the nation of Moab? Who is Moab? Where was Moab born? Moab was born in a cave out of the union of a father and his own daughter. Right? The daughter got the father drunk, and she had relations with him, and she got pregnant from her father, and she called the baby Moab, from dad. It doesn't get uglier than that. So all these things taken together, the Mashiach, who we're all waiting for, he was born in that cave, if you wish. He was born in that cave. It's not pretty! There's no such thing as the editor of the Torah. There is no such thing. But if I was the editor, I would take a cosmic eraser and I would erase a lot of these passages. It's not pretty. For sure I would erase Rachav, because I would erase a lot of things. But we're seeing a pattern. And the pattern is Ze leumat ze asa Elokim. And the pattern is also, right, the next picture, the fruit encased by layers and layers of peel. You have the seed of the Moshiach, right? Is a potential of the greatest goodness, and we're still waiting for it. But it's encased in layers and layers and layers and layers of crust and peel and filth. Why? Why? Well, you know why. Because there's the Yetzer Hara, the forces of evil have a lot to lose. If the forces of evil let that soul break through, oh boy, what good is going to do? Sometimes you meet people, and, you say to yourself, wow, how did you ever go so low? I mean, it's like the filthiest filth. You speak filth, you think filth, you talk filth, you act filth, you're all filth, right? you know what you know about that person? If the forces of evil would just like let go of him and let his soul come through, oh boy, what a great person that can be. But the forces of evil have a lot to lose, right? The forces of evil don't attach themselves to somebody. There's not much at stake. There's not much at stake. No, so she's going to let her light shine. Again, every person is an incredible person. But some people, they can go so low, yeah? And the forces of evil, if they would ever kind of just step back, if the peels would come away, there's a lot to lose. So they don't want that light to come through. So me as an outsider, I want to penetrate through all this peel. I want to zoom to right into what you are at the core. There's a tool I need for that. There's a name for it. What's it called? What is the name? What is the name of the concept which tells you, don't focus on the peel. Don't focus on the peel. Don't focus on the peel. Just zoom into the essence. What do we do? There's a simple word for it. You all know it. It's tzniut. Exactly. That's called tzniut. That's called tzniut. In English, modesty, right? Modesty, we're now understanding modesty, right, at the root, at the root of it. Of course, it's also sleeve lengths and hemlines and collarbones. Yes, it's that too. Because in essence, what is that? That's saying just don't focus on don't focus on the peel. You look at the peel, you're going to turn around. You look at the peel, it's going to distract you, right? You look at the outer layers, there's nothing there, walk away. Right? You look at the outer layer, it's going to distract you. You're not going to understand what's there. Tzniut is like zoom. Right? It allows you to pierce and to penetrate through all the outer layers, either by not being distracted by them, right? Or technically by covering up, right? Not being distracted by them and zooming right into what's at the essence. And tzniut, right? That zooming into what's right at the essence is the tool that can help you unleash all the goodness that is contained within. So here we have our Rachav, right? Who is the opposite of tzniut, who is the opposite of sanctity, who is the opposite of kedusha. She is a kedesha, right? She's a kedesha. And because that is her difficulty, because that is her downfall, that's also her greatest talent and her greatest power, right? She repents, right? Please God, forgive me in the merit of the chevel and the chalon and the choma, right? And she, right, becomes a woman of tzniut, and thus allows for the Jewish people to enter the land, right? To enter like that seed, that fruit, right? To peel away all the crust and to enter the land, which is the land where you can achieve the most kedusha. Like we just learned, the land of Israel is the land where you can achieve the most kedusha. So let us not think that people like Rachav, who started off so lowly, are people to be disregarded. In fact, and with this thought we will end, the Gemara tells us, never, ever, ever disregard people who you think are spiritually worthless. Never disregard them. You know why? Because sometimes those people who you think are spiritually worthless, they have nothing going for them, sometimes, especially, says the Gemara, in a prayer setting, when all the Jewish people are together praying, sometimes God is more pleased with those people who have nothing going for them. Why? Why? A person who is righteous and pious and does everything he's supposed to do, that's good. It's a wonderful thing. Nobody walk out of the store saying, we learned that you don't have to do. No. A person, but watch where I'm going with this. A person who's righteous and who's pious, he comes to shul on Yom Kippur, he's fasting, and he says, God, please forgive me. Why? Listen, I'm not so bad. I gave a lot of money to charity. My Shabbos table is full of guests. I always pray 3 times a day. Kind of like, he knows he's got something going for him, and that's what he relies on. But somebody who doesn't have anything going for him, he shows up once a year to synagogue, and he's kind of a little bit embarrassed, kind of doesn't really want God to know that he's there. He stands in back, or she stands in back. What does this person offer to God? Listen, God, I have nothing going for myself. The only thing I have going for myself is that I'm your kid. That's it. Sometimes that simplicity, because it's lacking arrogance, Hashem doesn't like arrogance. A person who takes a lot of credit for his deeds, Hashem does not like arrogance. That arrogance is a turnoff for God. But a person who has nothing going for himself except that he has a Jewish soul, I'm your kid, you gotta help me. That humility, that simplicity is very, very special in the eyes of God. And therefore, right, we learn in source number 15, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, Kol ta'anit, Hashem says, listen, whenever you Jewish people get together, let's say on a fast day, right? Everybody's congregated together. She'ein ba miposhei Yisrael, if there are no sinners in your synagogue, einat ta'anit. It's not a fast day. I don't accept your prayers. You make sure that the poshim, criminals, sinners, yeah? That those sinners are among you. You make sure they feel comfortable and they are included among you. Why? Just like in the Holy Temple, as part of what we offered on the Korban were the spices, right? The incense, the spices. There were 12 spices. 11 of them were so fragrant. The 12th one, it was so, it did not smell good. It smelled terrible. But that last spice, even though it smelled terrible, it must be part of the spices. It must be part of the spices. The same way, just like among the Jewish people, you have some people that are so fragrant. They have so many mitzvot that give off such a good fragrance. But if you are not going to bind yourself together with that one that has nothing going for himself, it's worthless. Right? So when we look at a person like Rachav, let us not, God forbid, make the mistake that she has nothing going for herself. In fact, last source, says the Gemara, we learn this lesson also on Sukkot, when we hold the 4 species, the lulav, the etrog, the hadassim, the aravot, and we shake them all together. We bind them when we shake them together. These 4 species, they need each other. If you have only your lulav and your hadassim and aravot, and you go grab a banana because you're missing a glorious yellow fruit, and I think bananas are glorious. In fact, I had one for breakfast. Yeah, if you go grab a banana, it doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. You need to have these 4 species. Why? Because these 4 species, they need each other. 2 give fruit. 2 don't give fruit. The etrog, it's a fruit, right? The lulav, a palm tree, dates, fruits. But the 2 other species, no fruit. In fact, the aravot don't even have a good smell. It just looks green, that's all. The hadassim, at least they have a smell. But the last one doesn't even have a smell. Says the Gemara, ha'osim perot yu zkukin le'she'enan osim. Those which make fruits, they need those which don't make fruits. You're lacking if you don't connect yourself to that one who doesn't make any fruits. And the one who makes no fruits needs the one who makes fruits. Just like among the Jewish people. There are those people, they don't make any fruits. They don't have anything to go for themselves there in terms of their spirituality. There are those who make lots of fruits. They need each other. And lest we think that those which don't make any fruits is because they're worthless, God forbid. We learn from Rachav, right, to conclude that which on the outside looks like it's encased in impurity, right, has in it the potential to be something of great, great, great caliber.